As much as he might wish it otherwise, in the Parliament today, the Prime Minister was still dogged by his crude commentary about his Japanese counterpart. Here's Opposition Leader Angus Taylor kicking off at the top of question time.
This morning the Prime Minister was asked, yet again, about his classless comments on the Bush Deep podcast. Yet again, he refused to give a straight answer. To save him from embarrassment, the New South Wales Premier stepped in and shut down the question. Why won't the Prime Minister man up, stop hiding behind his colleagues and take responsibility for his grubby behaviour?
And I direct him to the comments of the Ambassador of Japan, who stated very clearly the dinner hosted by Prime Minister Albanese during the Prime Minister's visit to Australia this May was held in a very relaxed atmosphere, and we believe it helped build a personal trust relationship between the two leaders. Indeed it did. We have a very good relationship with Japan, and I look forward to continuing to work with our friends on economic issues as well as interests of peace and security and prosperity in our region.
Now, I chose to play the Prime Minister's response in full tonight because I wanted you to see that there was not even anything remotely resembling an apology to Japan's first ever female leader. And then I want to play you something that no one should miss. After that question from the opposition leader, well, the government then gets to ask itself a question. Asking yourself a question in Parliament, we call that a Dorothy Dixer. So with the Prime Minister on the ropes about the Mellon comments and the disrespect he showed Sanae Takaichi, he showed Japan, even the disrespect shown to Kylie Minogue and his own wife over those shagging comments, have a listen to this from one of the Labor backbench.
How is the Albanese Labor government working to prevent family, sexual and domestic violence, improve early intervention and make sure women and children can access support they need free from violence?
Now, how more shameless can this bloke get? The man who makes smutty, crude jokes about women now wants to lecture the nation about treating women and girls with respect. Well done on the opposition, heading back with this follow-up question.
A month before he made sexist remarks about the Prime Minister of Japan on the Bush Deep podcast, the Prime Minister did post this comment online. No matter who you support in politics, it is completely unacceptable to demean, objectify, belittle or offend women. So why won't the Prime Minister stop hiding behind his female frontbenchers and the New South Wales Premier and take responsibility for his disrespectful behaviour?
Yeah, good on you, Zoe McKenzie, for calling it out, and shame on every one of those Labor women running a protection racket for the Prime Minister.
The Liberals have absolutely lost the plot, trying to perpetuate this ridiculous thing.
The remarks from the Prime Minister have been misinterpreted. He has enormous respect for women.
Those opposite who've engaged, who are so desperate to score political points that they are confecting a diplomatic issue.
All of you women, his Sheila Shields, you diminish all of us making excuses for grubby innuendo filmed from the couch at the lodge instead of calling it out. Now, not so Chris Minns. Some journalists today said that Minns defended Albanese at the press conference they held together today in the Hunter Valley. Minns did not. Chris Minns did not. He spoke up to change the topic, but if you listen carefully, he didn't make excuses, unlike the Labor women, for smut that just can't be defended. Here's a clearly under pressure and frustrated Prime Minister today, and then that intervention from Premier Minns.
Look, I've answered this question many times. The fact is that the Japanese Prime Minister and I have a very good relationship. The Japanese ambassadors made very clear statements, indeed, about how warm our dinner was, and it was indeed. It was fantastic.
Go and ask 1,000 workers what they care about today. Honestly, this is the biggest announcement for this region in a generation. Exactly. Can we just talk about it for 5 minutes?
Now, you'll recall last night I said this about Minns. when it comes to integrity. The left are frauds. I couldn't imagine Peter Malinauskas or Chris Minns behaving as the Prime Minister did in that low rent podcast. I couldn't imagine Kim Beazley entertaining a question about shagging Kylie Minogue. I just can't. Look, if your emails to me today are any indication, many of you agree with those comments. Almost all of you say just how embarrassed you are that Albanese represents us and our country on the world stage, and I agree with you. But questions of character to one side, we'll come back to this. Let's get into the reason why Minns was there with Albanese this morning in the Hunter Valley.
It is in our national interest to have an economy that has manufacturing that is not dependent upon something somewhere else occurring, because we know that can lead to disruption.
It's a complicated deal. It was not straightforward. You've got the federal government, the state government, alongside Tomago. We wanted to make sure that any agreement wouldn't just last past a media release or a meeting like this, but decades into the future.
Today's announcement, a rescue package for Tomago, a whopping $2.5 billion to bail out a smelter and keep heavy industry in this country. And it's not government money. There's no such thing as government money. This is your money. It's your money bailing out Rio Tinto, because without the cash, they'd leave Australia and go and set up in a country where power prices are cheaper. That's the reality. And who can blame them? We have done this to ourselves. Australia is only in this position because we've all drunk the green energy Kool-Aid and have gone from being a country rich with God-given natural resources that we used to use, like coal and gas, to one fast drowning in debt and energy insecurity because we think Chinese wind turbines and solar panels make more sense. Well, they don't, and they never will. Not when the coal and gas that we won't use here is shipped off to China and India for them to use anyway. How's that saving the planet? It's not. You know that. It's powering their economy. It's making China and India richer, but doing nothing for the environment. It takes China just 12 days to produce the same amount of carbon emissions that we in Australia produce in a whole 12 months. We are 1% of global emissions, but somehow we think we can change the weather here all by ourselves. We just have to go back to the dark ages, junk jobs, and make ourselves poorer as a result. Now, years ago, business writer Terry McCrann warned that net zero policies were an economic suicide note, and he was right. At today's announcement, alongside Albanese and Chris Minns, was Energy Minister Chris Bowen. I mean, it's like the arsonist standing there with the fire brigade, isn't it? I mean, who does Albanese and Bowen think they are kidding? We all know that the only reason Tomago needs this bailout is because of Labor's net zero madness.
This is a $2.5 billion admission of failure on energy policy in this country.
Why are we paying this? Because we've butchered our energy system, that's why. Because when we had coal-fired power stations, Tomago was never asking us for money, was it?
Part of today's bailout, I should add, it is about Labor trying to hold off a push by One Nation into those Hunter Valley coal mining seats. Now, there's a state election in Victoria, of course, in November, but there's also one in New South Wales in March, and Labor are worried. So they are using the $2.5 billion announced today to shore up workers' jobs and votes using your money. If you work it out, that bailout equates to about $2 million per worker's job. $2 million per job. You are getting your private health insurance rebate taken off you. You're being slugged with new taxes so that Labor can spend $2 million per job, $2.5 billion overall, to save this smelter and save Labor votes in Labor's seats. Now, honestly, almost every night I say to myself, I don't think it can get any bad, any worse. I don't think Australia can slip even further down a slide to nowhere land. And then we do. It gets worse. It gets worse every night. I don't think I've ever seen a government this bad on so many levels But here we are. And if I
Quick
feel like
favour.
that,
If you are the kind of
suspect
person who
you
loves
do
Australia and wants to stay up to date on what is really happening in our country's politics, hit that subscribe button and click the bell. It helps us keep this channel going. Over 90% of viewers have not yet, and it would mean the world to us if you did. Thank you. Now back to the show. The Prime Minister has spent years lecturing the rest of us about respect for women, and this week he stood in question time and refused to say sorry for a female world leader's body. G'day, Australia. That is not a slip of the tongue. That is the mask falling off in front of the whole country. Here is what actually happened. Anthony Albanese sat down for a podcast and made a crude reference to Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. Then, instead of owning it, he hid behind the classic Canberra escape hatch. It was misinterpreted. He has enormous respect for women, nothing to see here. The opposition leader pressed him. The Premier of New South Wales jumped in to shut the question down, and the government answered a serious question about diplomacy with a pre-planned softball about domestic violence. You cannot make this up.
This is not the first time. The same man has made crude remarks about a footballer, a Japanese official, and Kylie Minogue. The same man once told the nation it is completely unacceptable to demean, objectify, belittle, or offend women. The words were lovely. It is the conduct that has gone missing. Do not forget to like and subscribe if you are enjoying this. It genuinely helps us bring you these stories. But if you think this is just a culture war sideshow, follow the money, because that is where the real cost lands. While the Prime Minister was dodging questions about his manners, the government quietly signed a $2.5 billion bailout for the Tomago aluminium smelter in the Hunter Valley. Read that number again, $2.5 billion of your money, because Labour's energy experiment has made power so expensive that one of the country's biggest industrial plants cannot afford to keep the lights on. They'll dress it up as manufacturing sovereignty and long-term resilience. Let us translate that from politician into English. It is a $2.5 billion admission of failure. The renewables push was sold as cheaper and cleaner. Instead, it has driven energy costs so high that we are now paying the industry to survive the very policies we voted for. And the timing is no accident. The Hunter Valley is full of Labour seats and an election is coming. That is not economic strategy. That is panic with a press release. The two stories are the same story. A leader who cannot apologise and a government that cannot admit its own policy is bleeding the country dry. On the world stage, we look unserious. At home, we are paying for it twice, once at the power bill and once at the smelter. This is what happens when integrity at the top goes missing. The damage control becomes the only policy left. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.